Today on the program, we'll start with some concerns and quotations by international groups and organizations. Reintegration of foreign nationals into communities without justice and accountability for past xenophobic attacks is a recipe for disaster. The other one says, to deter those who attack foreign nationals, there is an urgent need for effective policing, arrest, and prosecution. Strong action is needed to show there are consequences for such acts before there is another round of violence against foreign nationals. Calls for urgent investigations, arrest, and prosecution of persons believed to be behind the attacks, and the government needed to do more than just condemning the attacks. There are even more concerns that the violence came amid rising political tension as South Africa goes to the polls on May the 8th, 2019. So, how can xenophobic attacks be checked? What should African leaders do? Are there other options? My guest of the program is a scholar, an international peace advocate, former Director General of the Nigeria Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, IPCR, and now the Executive Director of Ubuntu Center for Africa Peace Building and Development, Ucap, Professor Oshita. So our focus today on the program will be on xenophobic attack of foreign nationals in South Africa. What are the solutions and what are the best options after this time out? Stay with us. Welcome to Diplomatic Ties.
And we're doing our best to make it as convenient and easy as possible for prospective students.
What we can do is just support the efforts of West African countries to integrate, to organize a better regional, political and economic integration.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Diplomatic Ties, building friendship and enhancing oneness among nations. Watch Diplomatic Ties on NTA International.
Let's pull off a bit. Yeah. The multiplier effect in terms, what are the likely consequences to the South African economy if this thing is not checked?
Oh, that's a very serious one. Right now, what is happening there is simply a kind of what we call transferred aggression. They have not diagnosed their problem. Their targets now are not the causes of their problems. Most of the people, the Africans they are attacking, are people who are into the private sector, who are helping to stimulate their economy and providing jobs for their own people. They are not people who are working with the South African government as to say that they are collecting the jobs that they should, be that should be for them. So that, for one, shows that they have not even analyzed their problem. And one of the consequences, again, is that one of the consequences will be the fact that there are already ricochet effects in other countries. We are aware of Zimbabweans burning trucks that have South African registration numbers. We know that this could get on the side of Mozambique or get on the side of the other, neighboring countries. The neighborhood effect of what they are doing may be overwhelming, because South Africa is supposed to provide an example in terms of running the economy, running industries that will absorb a lot of young people. But they are not able to, give themselves the skills to work even with the government. So it's a problem, and I think that it is important for stakeholders in South Africa to analyze the problem and find out where the root causes are, rather than just attacking, as we say, attacking the straw man, just attacking people who have no connection with their problem. And I think also that when people are far away from their government, when they cannot access their government, if it is bad with them, they think that the next person is the cause of their condition. And that's part of why they are reacting the way they are reacting. So the South African government also need to do a self-examination as to whether they are providing for the needs of their citizens.
Sometime when you were the DG of the Nigerian Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, you did a project in conjunction with Professor Gambari's institute towards an African way of resolving conflicts that will be long-lasting. Could it be applied?
Oh, why not? Well, there are different levels of this. I was also part of the African Union, African Solutions for African Problems. But all those are the strategic level. Now, how do you bring those down? Countries involved must have a buy-in. Okay. If South Africa wants, they have a lot of peace-building, by the way, peace-building organizations that are well known in the continent, in South Africa. But we think that they are operating in a parallel, way, such that what government is doing is different from what, the NGOs are doing. The government must have a buy-in so that those NGOs, can work for. We have ISS Pretoria is one of the most well-known groups in Africa, And then we also have another one that is involved in real mediation and conflict. So those ones must be. If they are not invited to be part of it, they will not be able to engage. And government in South Africa must show that it is desirous of solving the problems through mediation or through a conflict resolution, so that they can now engage. At our own level, outside the South African, far away here in Nigeria, we can contribute if we have the entry points to be able to do that. But otherwise, we can just analyze and send them the feedback, our own feelings.
Because I remember you came up with a resolution, and it was clearly that it is not the conventional way of that people know.
Yeah, that's where we talk about Ubuntu. And that's why we in Ubuntu Center for Africa Peace Building and Development, we've decided that we must remind Africans of where we are coming. We are coming from the stock where Ubuntu actually worked. It was the spirit of Ubuntu, which is being together, being connected, showing empathy and living for the other. In Africa, we used to say, I live because you live, and you live because I live. That's where Ubuntu comes in. Now, even South Africans often claim that Ubuntu is original to them. But Ubuntu is original to the entire African continent. Sure. Now, because it derives its source from the Bantu, word. Now, Nigeria and other African countries helped South Africa gain its independence on the basis of Ubuntu. Now, this same Ubuntu is what they are destroying, because they are now saying that they can live alone. But when they were in trouble, they couldn't live alone. So it is important for people to know that Ubuntu is the essence. That was why Africa was basically a communalistic people. We lived in a communal way. So I think we should go back to Ubuntu and then find out our interconnectedness and how we can reinforce this in order that we can solve each other's problems, rather than thinking that the other is our problem. Let us think that the other is a solution to our problem. And that way we can reverse the kind of negative perception that is now pervading the South African population.
Without necessarily going to the history of xenophobic attacks, I'm just concerned, and that's what I want to drive on this program. What could really be the way out to solving this problem?
Clearly, this is an unfortunate development, and the fact that it is escalating beyond what should be tolerated is quite disturbing. I believe that the South African government must show that it has capacity, to provide security for all who are within its territory. The second level is that the SADC region must come together to provide solutions to xenophobia, because it is a potentially very, very, very dangerous development. We are aware that there are some reactions in Zimbabwe and some of the other neighboring countries. And if Southern Africa as a whole should go on flame now, I think Africa will have too much to handle as it is now. At the strategic level, the African Union mustn't wait any longer to intervene in what is happening in South Africa. Some of the pictures we have seen are very, very disturbing. I don't think this is a forum to begin to talk about that, but the African Union has a duty to intervene in the situation in South Africa. And it's so painful because for us as Nigerians, we remember it's only a few years ago, South Africa got its independence in 1994. Of course, we do know that it is the youngest African country apart from Southern Sudan, which was 2011. But we know how some of our people, our parents, workers contributed to the independence of South Africa. And so it is real, you know, it's a bad thing for them to pay Nigerians, you know, with that kind of response in terms of dealing with our people. I am not just speaking speaking for Nigerians alone, but the whole of Africa. We are getting to a situation where if South Africa continues what it is doing, then the picture, the global picture that we are getting, that there are some invisible hands trying to set Africa against itself. We
pray it doesn't get to that. Now, the worry is there, but before it gets to a stage where we say maybe Africa will get balkanized into maybe its own continent, maybe South African continent, Nigerian continent. As a peace-building advocate, we know if you follow the African balance, if you follow the length of a snake, then you can destroy the entire strength. But this is not what we're looking at. How can it be solved? Looking at some of the peace-building efforts you have been involved in.
I think that the most important thing is for the South African government to mobilize its critical population. Right now, where this is that it is tending towards a leaderless violence. And so when you have leaderless violence, then you find it difficult to know where the problem is. But the first thing is for them to ensure that policing is strengthened in South Africa. There are places where policing is a bit, you know, not up to scale. I think that what the government should do is to begin to mobilize communities and ensure that they use a community policing model to identify leaders in various communities in terms of, you know, peer comparison. Say Nigeria makes a statement, Angola makes a statement, and so on and so forth. We should be able to coordinate what is happening so that South Africans, we know that this thing is being treated by the other countries in the continent. Okay. So I believe that a lot needs to be done in terms of policing, and then in terms of coordination at the SADC level, because SADC region is so important, very important.
Well, you know, as what is SADC?
SADC, South African Development, Community. So SADC is important that they work on this, and then the African Union, as I said earlier. I think the chair of the Peace and Security Committee of the AU is around. Nigeria was.
Nigeria did not get it. That he went to, I think.
At the committee level.
Yeah, Nigeria is on the saddle now.
Level,
yes,
so
yes.
I think that is important. We should make a statement. I know Ambassador Bankole is a very, strong diplomat. He must be on top of that. But we want to see the signs that this thing is abating, because it's very disturbing when you see the pictures.
But sometime last year, Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister led a delegation to South Africa, and a couple of resolutions were reached towards stemming this. And it was resolved that they'll be meeting almost in quotas to appraise and see the level?
Well, it's at the diplomatic level, results don't come that quick. I remember watching Julius Malema on TV, a South African young man who is in
opposition.
In the parliament. And he was addressing, and told the black youth that they should not attack their African brothers. But I don't know where it has gone wrong, why it is that they have not been able to stop, and it looks like it's getting worse. There was a post recently where they said that after the elections on the 8th, it will get even worse than what
that
we are
has already
saying.
been a concern expressed by stakeholders. But you have mentioned SADC, you have mentioned AU.
Yes.
Is there nothing the United Nations can do?
Well, I talked about African solutions to African problems.
Sure.
I do not believe that this problem is beyond SADC and AU. The UN has a lot of things to do. You understand? Sure. So in my mind, I believe that we can solve this problem just between South African government, SADC, and AU. You understand? Because if you just, every little problem you call the UN, that means you are abusing protocol. Because if you have an ailment, you start with the least effective drug. If you start with the most effective drug, you have damaged your capacity to be able to get healed. Because that drug, if it fails, you have no other recourse. That's why it is important to do these things at the national, the regional, and the sub-regional, and then the continental level, which is the AU. This can be done. I believe that AU should not allow things to go out of hand.
I thought maybe in the spirit of Ubuntu by now, maybe institutions like you would have coalesced, come together, form a collegiate, think of what to do, and we'll see you guys already marching to the scene.
We are actually talking. We have platforms that we are communicating. We are talking and watching what is going on. But as the non-governmental structures, if you are too much in a hurry to get involved, the government will tell you that they have not exhausted their own avenues, for solving the problem. Because the primary responsibility is the government of South Africa. You understand? So they must do everything to deal with this issue. Otherwise, SADC should be able to handle it. If they are not able to do that, then the AU must prove itself. Because the basis of, the survival of the AU is the communion of African states.
Is it possible that the international community itself, the governance process and the business sector can also pull out if it is not nipped in the bud?
Well, you see, these are very obvious, consequences of what is going on. Most good businesses do not like where, there is instability. And so that follows as a matter of course, that if the South African government is not able to handle this, early enough, most businesses will pull out. And so there will be worse for it. The same people who are killing others for taking their jobs will now not have any business to want to apply for jobs. Government alone cannot absorb the populations indirectly. And as I said before, some of the people they are attacking are people who have set up little private businesses here and there, and having their own people to work for them. There was a time when they were on telly, a lot of South Africans were saying, leave these people, they have employed us, like those in the property sector. They employed a lot of people working with them, but they were being attacked and being chased away from South Africa. It's a contradiction if they really want jobs. Okay. They should learn what is going on and then key into it and be able to, help the economy grow for their own good.
What can other African countries do, not minding the ones that are directly affected? We know the immediate ones, Nigeria is one of it, Zimbabwe and others I cannot mention right away, in terms of coming up with strategies so that the thing does not escalate and come up with some kind of reprisals.
Seriously, I believe I will be shocked if there are no serious back channel, diplomacy going on now, because you can't let this just flow the way it is going. I believe that individual African countries have initiated some back channel diplomacy, to engage the South African government and also, the African Union, so that they will sit down and, discuss the problem and then profile the immediate, immediate solutions, and then the medium-term and long-term solutions to this. It is very important. If nothing like that is happening, then we are going to go for a free fall, and we cannot predict what will happen.
We pray it doesn't get to that.
Yeah, after the elections in May. Yeah.
Well, naturally, one would say that, how do I put it now? Government exists for the people, and it all depends on how the people understand the government. A situation where the South African government looks helpless. We have other countries, just like sometimes, other African countries rallied around to put them where they are today. Should we be tired of them?
Well, no, not really. I mean, at governmental level, we can't get tired. But any government that is helpless in the face of insecurity and is not able to provide for the welfare and security of the people should actually re-examine its own, the reason itself for its own existence, because it's a fundamental right. Every constitution provides for that. It's a basis, upon which government was set up. Even historically from the social contract theories. That's the basis, for government existence. So I don't think that the South African government would drive itself to a point where it would be considered helpless in the face of xenophobic attacks, because this is not the first time. So I believe that it's a problem they have been, talking about and planning for, so it shouldn't really shock them. They should not be overwhelmed. Okay. Yeah, so that's
a few months ago, somebody talked about the need for governments of the world, or national governments, to take demographic governance seriously. Some persons are feeling that maybe because the demographic governance is not taken seriously, the population is exploding, and now those who maybe are vulnerable and doing this field, they don't have jobs. People who have not from them have taken over the jobs.
Well, I mean, we all know that the world, particularly Africa, in fact, Africa, let me not talk about the world, because I know in some parts of the world, they are looking for youthful population. But in Africa, we have more than our fair share, and we are still, going on. I think that provision for citizens, whether it is young people or is something that must be taken for granted, in the context of governance. So we must know how many we are going to be by 2023, for instance. We must know how many we are now, and according to the various demographics, youth, women and all that. So the lack of that knowledge itself is potentially very dangerous, because you cannot plan without indicators. You must plan with indicators. If you are planning without indicators, you are aiming in the dark, and you aim in the dark, you can't get anything because you're shot in the dark. So I believe that that's why population, census is a very important thing, in any country. I don't know how South Africa is doing with that, but I know that some African countries are not doing well at all. Okay. Yeah.
As much as you have talked about the fact that a lot of diplomatic steps have been taken, and groups like you are also showing concern, and with time we'll see results, it's possible that the vulnerable groups across the African countries affected directly would want to do something. As a peace builder, what would you tell them? As painful as it may appear.
Yeah, I think that as a peace builder, what I would say is that we must, connect wherever people are. Africans who are concerned about what is happening in South Africa must connect, look for wherever to make a contribution. But we need to know from the government of South Africa, are they overwhelmed? Is the government overwhelmed by this? Because if they say they are overwhelmed, then we can activate other levels of intervention. But where it is just silent, we are just seeing the pictures, we know it's going on, and then we don't know what plan, the game plan that the government has. It's difficult to want to intervene. Remember the issue of sovereignty, you know, and you can't just begin to talk about that country or say you want to contribute without respect for their sovereignty. So there are a lot of limitations, and so we must watch carefully. That's why I have talked about those that have, you know, authority by mandate to be able to engage. The government itself of South Africa, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and then the African Union. Those levels must, you know, come together to be able to deal with the problem. Because if each country that is involved begins to initiate its own retaliatory, you know, of course, it won't be a happy thing at the end. And we must avoid this. I believe that the leaders of that xenophobic movement are not people who can be given a lot of credit for anything. Yeah, so I believe that is miscalculation, poor analysis of the problem in South Africa, and so they must be called, you know, to order so that the real picture, you know, they will see the real picture and then stop what they are perpetrating now in the name of protecting jobs that they are killing, they are driving away.
Well, Professor Oshita, it was nice talking with you on Diplomatic Ties.
Thank you very much for having me.
We looked at xenophobic attacks from South Africa, and you heard from the resource person, Professor Oshita. He has said that we hope it does not escalate because a lot of steps are being taken to nip it in the bud. Thanks for being guest on the program. Bye-bye.